Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of
the Super Data Brothers Super Show.
That's right. I am Ryan.
I am Eric.
And we are two real-life brothers who work in the data and analytics industry. And have we got a good one for you today, folks?
Yeah, you know, Ryan, I'm so excited for today's show because the people have been saying it for years, and it's been quasi-true for years. Self-service is the future. Self-service is the future. But many of us who have implemented self-service realize that it doesn't actually solve all your problems, right? And sometimes it creates more problems, right? So that's why I'm excited for today's show. And we have an interview segment we're going to broadcast from Day-to-Day Texas, where Ryan talked to Aaron Wilkerson about this very topic. So I think it should be a good show.
That's right. Multiple time guest Aaron Wilkerson. Aaron is the head of data governance at Carhartt here in Detroit and a all-around data leadership guru. So really looking forward to seeing this interview today. For you regular viewers, you may notice that we have some different backgrounds here. I am, of course, I am in Czechia, in Prague, at the Good Data European headquarters this week. So it's like dinner time for me right now. And Eric, it looks like you've moved.
Yeah, I moved my my tower upstairs. So
yep.
So here I am.
Nice. So last reminder before we get to the interview, folks, this is a live show. It is more fun for us. It is more fun for you when you get your comments, reactions, and questions into the chat, especially so that we can give you a shout out. Like we've got a hello from Germany. Hello from Czechia. Good to see you here. And then James Harris giving us a shout out. Hey, James, welcome to the Super Data Show. Good to have you. So, yeah, any updates for the people before we get to the interview with Aaron?
No, I think no updates really.
We're good to go.
Yeah, so we're gonna I think it's about like 10, 11 minutes, not too long of an interview, but we're gonna play it, and then if you have any questions, feel free to type them up while it's playing, and then we're also gonna discuss what Ryan and Aaron discussed during the video afterwards. So
so the way this is gonna work, this is a pre-recorded interview I did at Day-to-Day Texas with Aaron Wilkerson. We'll play the interview, get your comments and reactions into the chat, and then we will read your comments and reactions afterwards, discuss what it is that Aaron and I talked about, and really cover the topic overall of like self-service. What is it good for?
More like smell-service. No.
All right, let's roll that video before we make any other bad puns.
All right, here we go.
So I am here live at Day-to-Day Texas, and I am joined by Aaron Wilkerson.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So Aaron is presenting at this year's conference, and I think we'll just kick things off by saying, what's the presentation about?
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm talking about data leadership. In particular, how do we think about data leaders being more strategic? A lot of times in our careers, we get to the point where we want to progress, we want to make changes in our roles. However, we kind of get blocked by our senior executive leaders saying, hey, you need to be more strategic. So trying to give some points, I got about 40 minutes. So giving some people some ideas around, hey, here's some things you can do to be thought of as more of a strategic data leader and help with your career.
Because I've seen this a lot actually, is you kind of get to a certain level and then that's what you get told, right?
Yep.
Like, if you want to move up, we need to broaden our scope, think bigger picture. What's a couple pieces of advice you would share with people who maybe have hit that ceiling in their career?
Well, I would say one of the big ones is just thinking about just how you talk about the work that you do. I mean, one of the biggest things I see is that we don't necessarily share what we're working on. So just communicate and say, hey, this is something we're working on. This is why we're doing it. This is who it benefits. This is how the company is going to have value from it. So I think just kind of having a different take on making sure that people are aware of us, kind of market yourself a little bit. I know that people think that, people know what you're working on, but sometimes they don't know what you're working on. They don't know why it's important, why the business should care about it. So just flipping the narrative around, I need people to know about what I'm working on. I need to market myself a little bit better.
And how do you, what's the best way to sell that? So let's say you're going out and you're going to be telling, okay, I'm going to start telling people what I'm working on, what we're accomplishing. Is that you go out and talk about, and this is a leading question, but is that, do you go out and say how technically accomplished you are and with the complicated pipelines you built? Yeah. What is it that you need to communicate?
Yeah, I think that's the next level. It's kind of like Saul talked about, just kind of translating and understanding the language of the person you're speaking with. So if you're speaking with a peer in your team, they understand what you're working on. You can kind of talk shop with them. But if you're meeting with a director or a VP of a department, you need to kind of think about their level in terms of how do they understand the business? How does what you do translate to their understanding of it? So you don't talk about data warehousing tables, SQL, joins, and all that kind of stuff. And you're trying to meet with someone who's worried about sales, their marketing team, all those types of things. So I think you have to, one of the rules of speaking is know your audience. So I'd say that's the biggest one is know your audience and try to figure out how do you translate what you're working on to something they can understand.
Gotcha. And how can people, let's say someone's uncomfortable with that. Is it just a question of practice? You just got to go out and do it.
Yeah, I think it's practice. I'm definitely not an expert at that. So a lot of it's just kind of, maybe you work with, trying to explain to people in your house, your spouse, your significant other, your children, your parents, trying to explain to them what you do is a good first step because they may be somewhat interested. They have no clue what you do. So it's working with them. Having regular dialogue, so having regular one-on-ones with your leader, stakeholder discussions. So like you said, it's just kind of a practice, rinse and repeat and things like that.
Now, let's say that you're in a position, you're on a data team, and I know this happens to a lot of data teams, where you don't actually have much access or even any access to the leaders, right? Mm-hmm. So even if you want to go out and start telling your story, it's challenging because maybe you don't have that culture at your organization.
Right.
What advice do you have for people in that situation?
I would say start simple. So start with your immediate leader. So that could be your manager, director, kind of have the conversation with them and then ask for an introduction. So it's kind of things where you need refer a friend. So you ask them, hey, I would really like to speak with this person. Can you make an introduction? Can you introduce me? Can you maybe get invited to meetings? So if your manager's meeting with people, maybe say, hey, can I get invited to that meeting so I can meet people too? Skip level meetings are good. So if you have a manager and they have a director, ask to meet with that skip level leader. So I would say it's kind of like you have to make an effort. You have to be intentional. You have to ask the question, I would like to be invited to this meeting. Can I speak with this person? Can you make the introduction? It's not just going to happen on its own. You have to make that effort.
I think a lot of people too, they do sit back and wait, right?
Right.
Like they say, if I do a really good job, then I'll get invited.
Right.
And if you're not raising your hand, nobody's going to see you.
Exactly. People don't know you're interested. They may think that you want to sit on the back end side or meeting participation. I talked about that on LinkedIn. You have to talk, turn your camera on, talk in meetings. That at least gives the idea that you're interested. So if you're the guy who never speaks in meetings, you don't turn your camera on, they just think that you're just disengaged. You don't want to participate.
Right. And honestly, you're leading into the worst stereotypes of tech people.
Exactly. And that's something we have to fight against. They think that, we're nerds. We don't know how to speak to people. We can't speak to the business. So you have to fight that stereotype by putting in the effort, turning your camera on, speaking in meetings, asking questions, taking an interest in what people are doing, not just, talking about what you're working on.
I will tell you, it's one of my big pet peeves. Sometimes very large clients or prospects, I get on a call. This happened a couple weeks ago. We get on the call and there's probably 25 people from this huge company, and all 25 of them have their cameras off.
Right.
So the only people with their cameras on are the good data people.
Right.
And what that says to me about the company culture is, at least on the data team, because it was 25 data people who were there, is that's how they operate. And I wouldn't be surprised if I were to talk to them, that they were to say they're in the exact situation you're describing.
Right. And people notice, when I meet with our C-level team, they always have their cameras on, 100%. None of them, unless they will, if they don't have the camera on, they'll pause and say, I'm eating the meal, like I'm like, about to order lunch, something like that. But they're very intentional around, like, they're always engaged, always have their camera on. You will never find that when you go up and up the leadership chain where you have that type of situation. So it's only kind of as you have people that are more disengaged. So like I said, it sends a message and people notice. I mean, if you got your hair cut and no one knows you got a haircut, or you dyed your head purple and no one knows that, like that sends a signal that people have no clue, like, your engagement, or like you seem disengaged.
Yeah, that's a great test. That's the litmus test. Get a crazy haircut.
There you go.
And if nobody notices, you realize that you have an engagement problem.
Yeah, no one is paying attention, or you're just completely closed off to the world. They have no way of knowing. You haven't shown it to them.
So shifting gears a little bit, there's a very spicy opinion in the data world, at least, that I know you have.
Yep.
And I kind of share it with you. And that is that, brace yourselves, folks, that is that self-service doesn't work.
Ooh.
I know. And it's a hard thing to say, because for so many data teams, it's the goal.
Yes. Yep. That's the end point.
So why do you think that?
I mean, I'm a practitioner. I've worked in data engineering teams, BI teams. I'm now in governance functions. So, I mean, I've tried it. I think a lot of it is, kind of the marketing. Vendors will tell you about the goal of self-service. They want people to be data-driven, data-led. So the idea is that you have these end users who are just going out there, creating their own reports and kind of working off of these, Tableau, ClickView, Power BI, name your vendor. But the challenge we have is it just never works out. Either we may build out a self-service environment, but it's very hard to maintain that. It's a lot of resources to build that, and no one uses it. So you spend these months and years building this whole entire platform for self-service, and no one wants that, because you know what? People don't want to learn SQL. They don't want to learn how to make their own reports. They like having someone they can reach out to build their own reports. So you may have a small population of people who wants to do that kind of thing, but the problem is it takes so much energy and resources to do self-service. Is it worth it? Like, does the cost justify it to kind of build out this environment for a couple people to do self-service? Or you have so many intricacies around, like, you need a query of revenue minus this, minus that, minus that.
Yeah.
It blows up. You have to create your own ad hoc queries.
Yeah, and I've lived this too, right?
Yeah.
I think every data team wants this, because what they're seeing, and you can tell me if you've seen this too, but I think many data teams, what they're seeing is this insurmountable number of incoming requests.
Right, yep.
And what they think is, okay, we'll build a self-service platform.
Yep.
And then we won't get these requests anymore.
Right.
And we can focus on the other stuff that we think is more important.
Right.
Does that ever happen?
No, I mean, you're still going to, I mean, a lot of the idea is that, hey, if we can service 80% of the questions, and the data team only handles the 20% of like those tough questions, but the challenge is you don't really know what the questions is, because like it goes back to engagement, where like, do you know the types of questions the business wants to know?
Yeah.
Do you know what they're curious about? But so it's never worked out until what we thought about, where, the business will service all their own stuff and we'll work on the harder stuff. It's like, they don't want that. Like they don't want to do that. Like I said, it's just, but you don't really learn that until you're in the weeds, like you and I, just like you've worked with customers, you've worked with business stakeholders, and you realize, they just don't want to, or they just don't have the ability to. So it would take so much time to teach them, but it goes back to, is it worthwhile? Or you could just better prioritize. You can prioritize and triage the work that's been given to you. So I know it's a big challenge.
And I definitely think data people feel that. I was talking to someone the other day who expressed this. Well, they should all just learn SQL, right? Or that data it's not that hard. It's not that hard to learn Tableau. It's not that hard to learn Power BI.
Right.
We've pre-built this model for them. Why can't they just do it? And the thing you need to keep in mind is that these business people are also dedicated professionals who have dedicated their lives to learning something that's not data.
Exactly.
And so as much as you know about data, they know about supply chain or merchandising, and that's what they care about. And so your job is to enhance that, right? Not to bring them into your world, but to go into theirs with the answers they need.
Yeah, I challenge my peers a lot, because I hear that a lot in terms of, can't we just, it's so easy to use Power BI. All you do is do some joins. Like, bro, stop right there. Like, you just said the word joins. It would take them months to figure out what a table is, what a database is,
Exactly.
how to do joins. Like, that itself is months of things. It's like, what's the benefit? Like, why are we going through the effort trying to teach them all this just for us to do less work.
Yeah.
So like that's the challenge I have a lot. Just even my data peers, like we make it seem so simple. Like, you've been doing this for 15 plus years. They can say the same thing about us. Like, why don't we go learn what a financial model is? Why don't we
Exactly.
learn about how to forecast the sales for the sales team?
Exactly.
They say the exact same thing about us as well.
It's a two-way street, folks.
Exactly.
Last question, I think. This is also in a slight change of topic. How about those Lions?
Oh, aren't they playing in a game tomorrow?
I think they are.
Some type of a game tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh man, like as a originally from the city of Detroit, it's amazing. It's been an amazing year. We've you and I both know we went through the drudgery of 0-16 season,
Man.
trash bags over the heads, same old Lions. So it is amazing for the city to have just a team. And it started last year, like we had a roll toward the end of the season, but
Right.
this year is amazing for the team. We love it.
For Detroiters and people in the Detroit area, this has just been the coolest thing.
Yeah.
I'm a season ticket holder. I've been to a number of games.
Yep.
It's just mind blowing. I don't even know how to feel, to be honest with you.
Well, it's amazing too. Like people who don't even like watch football, like they're all of a sudden like learning about football, watching Lions.
Yeah.
So you're attracting a whole new group of people to the sport. To support the team.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to a couple games this year. It's been amazing. Just the crowd has been just crazy loud. So it's just brought a huge amount of value just in terms of just social, even economic. We also got the draft in April coming up too.
Yeah.
So this is definitely the year for Detroit sports.
And for those of you who are watching, it's currently January 2024. The Lions are hiring a director of data governance right now. So that's not my area of specialty. You can bet I thought long and hard about it. But if it is yours and you're interested in working for an NFL team, you might want to check it out.
Yeah.
We could stay here and talk about football all day. Of course, this is a data show, so we'll go ahead and wrap that up. But as to Michiganders, it's just too exciting not to bring up.
You have to bring it up. We would not be good Southeast Michiganders if we didn't bring that up.
Correct. All right, Aaron, listen, man. Always awesome to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you?
LinkedIn, as always. I post a lot of content on LinkedIn, trying to expand my network, just talk about it. Because you find that a lot of the challenges we've talked about, like everyone else faces it. Like
Yeah.
even across the world. I talk to people in Europe all the time. So it's a small group, but it's a global community. So LinkedIn is a big one. So I post, last year was every day. This year it's, at least 5 times a week. So a lot of content posting out on LinkedIn.
Yeah, follow Aaron, folks. This stuff is awesome. One of my favorite, this up-and-coming dudes. It's really, really good stuff. All right. We'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Thanks for tuning in, folks. And stay tuned to Super Data Brothers channel. I have lots of other great interviews coming up here at Data Day Texas. So take care, folks. Bye.
Right. Thanks.
There you go. The man himself, Aaron Wilkerson.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell that interview was recorded a while ago. It was recorded the day before the Lions blew the largest lead in NFC title game history in order to send the 49ers to the Super Bowl. So as much as I enjoy Aaron and I enjoy that interview, the last 2 minutes filled me with sadness.
Yeah, as that last bit played, I was kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
no, it's not.
You can see how joyful we were, though, in the moment, right? When we thought we were going to do it. And we almost did do it. So for those of you, StreamYard reported that it was having a hard time streaming to LinkedIn at one point. So if there was some choppiness at some point, I apologize. This integration isn't always as good as we'd like it to be.
Mm-hmm.
But Aaron, the thing I love about Aaron is you talk to him for 20 minutes and he was just like dropping truth bombs the whole time. One thing I would highlight from that, I think he deserves credit for coming up with the crazy haircut test.
The crazy haircut test? Oh, yeah.
The crazy haircut test is you get a crazy haircut and you see if anybody at work notices. And if nobody at work notices, you have a marketing problem personally.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, if you choose the moment that you get a crazy haircut to start marketing yourself, that's a good way to be remembered, I suppose.
I mean, it's a big opener, right? And it's a big opening number to your introduction.
The Mohawk analyst.
This is something that a lot of data people try to navigate, and it's very challenging. You hit a point in your career where the expectation becomes less about your technical skills and your ability to build a pipeline, and you start getting told, look, if you want to go any higher, it's going to start to be about leadership. It's going to start to be about decision making. It's going to be about team building and consensus building and all this other stuff. Atanas, good to see you in the comments here. Atanas is one of our bros here. I met Atanas in Barcelona at the IBM Tech Exchange conference. Cool dude.
Yeah, Ryan, about what you were saying, like I've kind of in my career, I've recently hit that point myself where it's like I was just an individual BI developer for years. Then I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, I stepped into a leadership role, and all of a sudden, I'm not writing SQL joins. I'm not doing that. I'm like deciding the direction of a team. So it's like a bit of a transition, right?
Yeah. And what steps, like, maybe you could share a little bit, like, what steps did you start to take that prepared you for that, to move from, the nerd hunched over the keyboard, punching in the code, to someone who's making decisions?
Well, honestly, it's a lot of what Aaron said. First of all, just like, if you have an idea, just say stuff, right? Even if you have half an idea, just say stuff, because most people have really good ideas. Most of the time that idea is not complete till they're done talking. So like that. And then like, as he said, like ask to be added to meetings, that sort of stuff. If an opportunity comes up, like, hey, we need someone to present at the whatever, say, yeah, I'll do that. And then do it. And then all of a sudden people know who you are. So like when the position above me opened up, like I was, I don't want to say an obvious choice, but I was a choice, and I applied and I got it. Right. Yeah. So like, just do the I don't want to call it not the stupid stuff. Do the obvious, the stuff people would tell you to do. Believe it or not, it works. You know?
Yeah. It's a well-trodden path.
Everyone says that. You just need to reach out to people. It's like, well,
yeah,
you do.
You really do. And, actually, Atanas, who's watching right now, is actually a great example of this. Like, Atanas wanted to get more involved in technology, reached out to our mutual friend, Jean-Georges Perrin, and now is like participating in this big user group. He's on the board of the user group. He's doing all sorts of stuff. And it all started because he decided he wanted to make a move towards data and analytics. He found someone who he wanted to reach out to, and he did it. Right. And that's, whether you're making the move into this field or you're already here and you're looking to move up, that is the biggest and most important thing is raise your hand and say, yes, I'm willing to try.
Yeah.
I also love Aaron's point about cameras on. It's just really, I don't know. I work for a cameras on company, and I cannot imagine working for a cameras off company. I know they're out there, and I know some of you in our audience are maybe cameras off people, and I totally get that. Right.
Yeah.
And there are times when all of us are like, I'm going cameras off, but having your camera on and being engaging, especially if you work remotely, engaging with people so that they can see you and get to know you, will redound to your benefit in your career.
Yeah. Well, I've seen people make the argument. It's like, we used to have like a meeting every week, and it'd just be a phone call. It's like, why do I need to start why do I need to put on a nice shirt and put on makeup or whatever for my weekly meeting? But the reality is that, a lot of jobs that weren't remote are remote. And so that little bit on the camera is all anyone's going to see you. Right.
Yeah.
So, if you have like a one-on-one with someone who doesn't like to have their camera on, then whatever, don't turn your camera on. But for at least for that big meeting where everyone sees everyone, I think it's important to turn your camera on.
Absolutely. And then, the advice, like, I think request skip level meetings. That's an easy way to start. It may be intimidating. Like, you may feel intimidated if you're not used to walking into a room. Say you're an individual contributor, and then you have a manager, and then there's a director level above the manager. Like, I totally understand feeling nervous if you're not used to sitting in a room one-on-one with a director. Hopefully most of us work at organizations where skip level meetings are like a normal thing that you do.
Yeah. Especially if like you do a lot of analytics or BI, like you may, depending on like how technical or business side you are, like already a lot of times have meetings with these people. Right. So it's not like you're going from like software dev and you're asking for a level up. Like you already on some level speak their language because you've been making reports for them for the past 2 years.
Right.
right?
Right.
And you've already
Yeah.
probably had meetings with them. So just like ask for like a one-on-one outside of that, just to talk about whatever. Like it's like, oh, get to know you on a more personal level outside of this is the person who makes my reports, right?
Yeah. And even if you're like, maybe, for whatever reason, because you're personally uncomfortable or maybe organizationally it would be looked at as weird, maybe the way around it is suggest kind of a team meeting with that person, right? Or suggest, but if you're the one organizing it, who came up with the idea, who sends out the Outlook invite, that stuff gets noticed. And I would do that with my customers too. Like, just if you're in analytics and, in your example, Eric, you work at a university, let's say you're working with, the office of, I don't know what they call it at MSU. When I was at Northwestern, we called it the Office of Alumni Relations. And that was like the office that's goal was to ultimately to raise money from the alumni.
Yeah, I think it's like university outreach.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Right. So let's say you're working with university outreach, maybe find someone at university outreach who's a little higher up in the organization and just say, hey, as a data team, we would like to meet with you to just discuss what you're getting out of your data, what your objectives are. What do you need to know, to outreach better on behalf of the university, and try to make those sorts of things happen.
Yeah, well, because plus if you do that, like if you wait for them to come to you, then like you'll have to work around like whatever ideas they got without knowing what you can actually provide.
Yeah.
But if you talk to them ahead of time, it's like, all right, let me get, okay, yeah, we could probably do something like that. Like then you get back to them with like what you actually provide. And then you're giving them they're starting from a point of with good direction instead of starting from nowhere and being like, hey, I need self-service without an understanding of what that means.
Speaking of self-service,
I try to transition to the next.
There you go.
Next
See,
topic,
we're getting better at this talk show thing, aren't we? Only took a year. So the speaking of self-service, I've heard him say this many times, and oftentimes it's like, when he says like self-service doesn't work or self-service is a waste. And I'm very curious in the chat if this gels with your experience. What I will tell you is that I have very often seen very ambitious self-service strategies crash and burn on the shores of, the rocky shores of user interest, user ability, your ability to train them, and your understanding of their needs. And if you don't have all those things lined up, self-service is often very challenging. And data people, I find, as Aaron pointed out, often don't understand why, because to them all this stuff is so easy, And I loved it when he was like, when he was talking about Power BI, and he was like, it's so easy. You just do some joins, and it's like, stop right there. Like, you've already gone too far when you said you just do some joins, right? Like, think about back to when most of us learned to just do some joins. And how hard it was to just do some joins and pick the right ones and know when to use which type. And asking your end users to do that, forget it.
So then, all right. So then what do you do instead? Someone comes to you and they say, hey, we want to do self-service. We want to like be able to answer our own questions without having to go to you. What should we do? Like what do we tell them? And not to tell them, what do we do for them?
I think so. If someone's volunteering, it's a little different than if like you come up with it on your own as a data team, right?
Yeah.
I would say the things that you need to do, to an effective self-service strategy takes into account the training, the support, all that sort of stuff. And I would say the other thing is, rather than proceed from the perspective that everybody's going to be able to do self-service, right? And we'll just provide this platform and then everyone will do self-service. You need to identify the people, we would typically call them power users, right? Back in the day, it was power users before the real advent of the data analyst role. Like when I think about in 2010, there were analysts, but like, at least in the places I worked, there was not someone whose whole job was to analyze data, who sat in a business seat. That has kind of developed, I think, a lot over the last decade, 14, 15 years. Those are the types of people I would work on empowering, and then allow them to kind of be the second or the first line of defense when it comes to generating analytics content for your end users, right? And then you're the second line of defense. But the idea that just everybody in marketing is going to be able to answer all their own questions,
Gotcha.
I haven't seen it happen. Now we do have a comment from James Harris here. Connect with James Harris, by the way. He left a comment earlier. 25,000 LinkedIn connections, which is more than me. He says, he's biased to having worked for ThoughtSpot in the past by saying some business people prefer to get fast answers through search rather than dragging and dropping in SQL. And I agree with this, James. I think that search and natural language processing, a natural language query, is going to unlock a much greater degree of self-service data exploration and query. ThoughtSpot was really, this kind of ThoughtSpot's whole thing is that, and has been for a long time. I think what you're going to see is, because of LLMs and the capabilities that they have, that this is rapidly going to become something that many BI tools offer, and I do believe that we will see more and more of end users' ability to use this, but the challenge will remain: are they able to ask the right question, right? Because there's a lot of context about the data that you may need to have in order to even ask the right question, and so helping people formulate that question, I think, is going to become part of our job as data people, right? Is to help teach them how to talk to these machines, as opposed to teaching them how to click and drag.
Yeah. And also making sure that the machines are set up in a way that the answers they give will be accurate, right?
Right. Which is a big problem.
That's why everyone is talking about, all of a sudden people are talking about semantic layer, right?
Yep.
Because in order to do good stuff now, you need a good semantic layer. You don't need one, otherwise you have 1,000 different SQL queries. But it's useful to have a good semantic layer with all the business definitions. But in order to do some like LLM natural language stuff, like, you need a semantic layer and like a strategy for translating a query into the semantic layer to feed to the LLM to get an actual good result.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, it really, like, from a technical perspective, yes. And what the semantic layer will allow you to do, ideally, is just pass the relevant information to the LLM in order to help it generate a result. And then, instead of the LLM generating SQL and presenting results, the LLM interacts with the semantic layer. The semantic layer, which is like deterministic, usually, right, uses relational algebra to create answers, will always give the same data back when you ask the same question. Whereas the LLM is not deterministic, and if you're relying on it to generate the SQL, sometimes it's going to do wrong
Weird
stuff.
Yeah.
But if the LLM talks to a SQL engine, a deterministic SQL engine, which they virtually all are, right? Then you kind of have this firewall of accuracy that sits between the two of them. And then the other thing the semantic layer gives you in this case is, you can prompt the LLM with like relationship data and context, right? Metadata about what do these fields mean? What do we call them here, right? That it might be called revenue, but we also call it this and this and this. And it's related to these other things. And here's some of the business concepts that's important for the LLM to understand how we think about revenue at our company. All of that can be embedded in a semantic layer that will give you much better results when you're dealing with these natural language query systems. I did ask, what's your experience with self-service, dream or reality? And we have this answer here. Who was this on LinkedIn? I hate how...
That was Richard Ashton.
Yeah, Richard Ashton. So Richard is like one of our diehards. Good to have you here again, Richard. Richard says dream/nightmare. And then he says, that said, creating data champions in a business can take the pressure off of data teams day to day. And that's kind of what I said earlier, I think, is like, rather than anticipate that everybody in the organization is going to be asking data questions and doing self-service, that I would create data champions in the business who will fill that role for many of their coworkers.
So basically so you have a firewall, a person who acts as a firewall between the ad hoc query and yourself. So
yeah.
that champion can answer those questions.
like the problem is real. The
Yeah.
problem is real. That so many data teams are just inundated with requests that they cannot, they
Mhm.
cannot, they can't address them all. They just can't. It's not possible, right? And if you're in that situation, I think there are things you can do around, I think, automation, and kind of adapting more kind of engineering principles into the way you work as a data team will eventually start to speed things up for you. Like you can, let's say you're going down the analytics as code route, right? A lot of code can be automated. So you can save a lot of time in terms of testing and deployment and even generating analytics objects if you're able to automate some degree of the code that underlies your analytics program. That will help. But ultimately, you also need to partner with the business and empower individuals in the business to become kind of the data experts for their area. Angela, good to see you here again. So a comment from Angela: data at so many organizations is so complex, and it's organized for that, right? So people new to the organization need so much training before they can even begin to understand the data and use it correctly, even if they know BI and SQL. They risk using self-service and getting the wrong result. This is very true as well. And
Yes.
one thing I will tell you, I saw over the course of my career was a real disinvestment from like data training as budgets have gotten squeezed. I can remember a time when I first started my career where it was an expectation when we were building new, this was in like the Power Cube OLAP days, right? So we were building new cubes, and that we would like make a training manual. That was part of what you had to do, was to build a training manual.
There were some departments.
Yeah, we had a training department when I started. When I started my career, there was a training department full of trainers who would come in and work with us as a data team to produce training materials for the data assets that we were creating. That all went away in like 2011, 2012. And so, a lot of it is very true. It's very hard to come into a new organization, even if you're skilled at self-service data tools, to then come in and be able to use those tools to generate valid results, because you lack the training and context specific to your new employer to be able to do that. And that's, I don't know, Eric, like, what do you guys do at Michigan State around this? Like, are you able to, what's your level of engagement with training your end users? Or like, man, I would just take a step back. What do you guys do for self-service?
Okay. So like the level of training, so that's actually one of the things that, since I'm becoming a manager, I'm starting to work on is create training. Because for a while, we've been in like the situation where it's kind of like, okay, we got people in Cognos on Query Studio on that, and we have training from 10 years ago. And if they want to use it, they have to go through that. But we don't have anything beyond that, right?
Okay.
So one thing that we're working on is kind of, as we've called it on the show before, like the franchise model of analytics. So we're not just like, oh, here's your training, you have access, talk to you later. That's like that we're running our data department like a franchise, so that we're able to like offer like these products, like data products, as you may call them. Everyone has their own definition of data product, but for us, it's basically like, hey, like basically your brochure. Hey, here's the different areas of data. Here's how you can use it. Here's the tools you can use. Give us a call. Right? Put the central IT data team franchise inside of your department. Right?
Yeah.
Like spin up a department with these parameters. Right? So that's kind of what we're trying to do right now.
So you're kind of giving your customers, like each department that you serve, almost like a little like BI practice in a box.
Yeah, that's what we're working towards, essentially, because the reality is that you need like things in organizations get very siloed, and you can say you can build it in, but they won't come. But if you make it clear what you have to offer, certainly someone in one of those departments can be like, "Hey, I want that," and then they'll come to you, and then you can build it. And then you can build, then you already have it built, and you can help like spin it up inside of their department, right? Host it in your central whatever enterprise tool you want to use. But like they have all this guidance and direction, and they have their own data experts, right, to work on stuff and answer those ad hoc queries, like instead of coming to you.
And right? how do you like, if someone comes to you, if a department comes to you and they like, are you giving them the tooling too? Are you saying like, okay, you guys got to use Cognos? Or are you kind of saying like, well, what do you use, and we'll fit that into what we do?
Well, we kind of say like, so different departments, like some may use Power BI, some may use Tableau, some may already be using Cognos. Basically what we'll do is I'll talk to like a leader in the department, and just have like a one-on-one where I describe like, hey, ask them like, okay, what are you trying to do? And then based on that, be like, okay, here are the tools we have, right? If you need enterprise, if you need to email PDFs, if you need to do all that stuff, you need to tried and true information. If you want to model in one spot and then report off of it, Cognos, right? If you need great visualizations, if you need to be able to embed it into a website, Tableau. If you know how to use Power BI, then Power BI, right? I don't know what else to say about Power BI, but if you use Power BI, then Power BI, doesn't do anything great, but it doesn't do anything too terrible. It's like, it's good. It's fine. If you want to use Power BI, you can use Power BI.
It's the NPC of BI tools.
Mm-hmm. It's like it does stuff,
Mm-hmm.
It's got lots of features so that salesmen can say, oh yeah, it does that. Then you look into it and you have to use like Report Builder to do paginated reports.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I'm writing this ancient interface. Right?
Well, it's basically SSRS, right?
It is SSRS.
Yeah.
Right. I started messing around with it. I open it up. I'm like, I'm not doing this.
I already know Report Studio. That's enough.
I already know like one kind of antiquated but very robust tool. I'm not learning one that's less robust and more antiquated.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's I think that's a very interesting approach. And I think you're going to see more and more of this kind of hybrid model for data teams where they kind of they're it's almost like deploying satellite instances of what they do into the business units, where you may be providing the core, you're providing the platform. So you're building out the tech platform.
Mm-hmm.
You may own the analytical databases, the Oracles or Snowflakes or, Netezas or whatever it is you're using.
Yeah.
Right. You may own that. And then otherwise, and you may build the core metrics, like the underlying, if someone comes to you and says, I need to report on like really basic dimensional attributes and corporate or enterprise facts. So revenue, cost, head count, whatever it is. And then the dimensional attributes that describe those sorts of things. You can give that to them and you can just say like, here it is, right? You've got it.
If there's like some like organization-wide definition of revenue, year over year, like what's the academic calendar versus budget calendar versus what government reporting calendar, right? You can have that stuff set up. You can have the stuff modeled, and then you can be like, hey, here's what's already built, right? If you have that like data expert, you can like here, get them set up, have them take this training, and then they can start building off of these models that have already been built. Or if you have your own, you have your own source systems already, like, okay, we can work on getting some of those tables into EDW, and then we can help you do some modeling. And then you've kind of got your own little practice inside your department spun up. Like, because right now, the reality is each department already has data people, right?
Yeah.
They have data people / BI people. There's just no cohesion throughout the organization. So if you as like a central IT BI department can provide that cohesion and provide that direction, then other people can just sign up and like they can utilize the good work you've already done. Right.
That is so often central data teams exist. There's a fundamental antagonism between them and the departmental data people. And I think what you're describing here is a way to like square the circle, bring everybody in where you say, look, I have these base components of data that you will actually make your job easier. And I think the key is what you're doing, rather than looking at them as a source of resentment because they're doing your job, you're instead saying, let me give you what I have. Let's partner together.
Yeah.
And I will make your job easier. And one thing we always say on the Super Data Brothers show is, as a data person, fundamentally, your job is to make other people succeed by giving them the answers to the questions that will lead them to make better decisions. So that's really what you're doing here, right? Your success will come from your ability to enable these data people in the business.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. You got it.
There
So
you
that's
go.
I'm not saying like that's where we're at right now, but that's what we're working towards.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, life is about becoming, right?
Yes, true.
Yeah, that's no, that's really smart. And I think I wish more data teams operated this way. I do feel it's catching on. I think that
Yeah.
that we're past the real dark ages of shadow IT. I don't even like that term. I mean, I get
Mhm.
like it's an accurate term, but I think we're past the dark ages of like IT and shadow IT are enemies. And part of that has to do with some cultural changes that we've had. And part of it has to do with these ideas like data mesh, data fabric, data franchise that are really advocating for more of a distributed data responsibility and even a distributed data architecture to some degree. And it's been very interesting and I think good thing to watch over the course of my career. Because definitely when I started, if like just the culture on my BI team was that if somebody came to us and had already done a bunch of their own data stuff and then needed our help to finish it, our attitude was kind of shitty
Yeah.
towards them. Like, oh, these idiots, why didn't they come to us to begin with? We could have saved them so much time, blah, blah, blah.
Well, they didn't know,
No, they didn't know.
they needed to do something and they did it.
Right. And could we really have saved them so much time? Right. Because they discovered all sorts of things about what they really needed out of their data by attempting to do it themselves that they would have never figured out if they had worked through us. If they had worked through us, what would have happened is they would have come to us. We would have built exactly what they said they wanted. And then when we delivered it, it wouldn't have been what they needed and nobody would have been happy. So really by them doing it themselves, attempting to do it themselves, it helped us a lot. It's funny, but it really would be better. Like that whole process was caused by this fundamental antagonism between the two. Whereas, like, what really should have happened is we should have just co-developed it.
Yeah. In reality.
And I think like that's really when we say like, oh, self-service doesn't work. I mean, it's almost what we're describing here is like, you have to work together as a team in order to build truly useful data assets and data products for people. And there can be a self-service component of it, but I would say you're always going to be working in conjunction with your end users rather than just letting them go.
You're not going to like, hey, we're doing self-service now and you stop getting tickets.
That's what people think is going to happen.
Yeah. That's not, you're going to still get tickets.
But that's what they hope for is they're like, there's so many tickets. What are we going to do? We can't handle
Well, you can stem the tide by enabling data experts in the individual departments. You can stem the tide because then they'll just be taking care of stuff. They'll know their data better than you do and they'll take care of stuff. Right. So you'll still get stuff, but like a lot of it will be like you'll enable each individual department to a degree that you won't get as much. Right.
I think
they'll be able to answer their own stuff.
I need you to tell me if you agree with this or not, Eric.
Sure.
I think maybe the best thing you can hope for is that you will always have more tickets than you can possibly handle, but those tickets will be more valuable, more interesting, and will take more of your skills and insight. Because you've gone through this process, right? There won't be as much, this is blue, can it be red?
Yeah. Or like, hey, why is year over year not this number? Why is it this other number? It's like, well, it has something to do with the data. I don't know.
Right.
It's not my report's fault.
Yep.
So like if there's a data expert on the team, they'll ask them first and that person will be like, oh yeah, no, quarterly, whatever, switches over on this date. And then, that's in 2 days. So yeah, the data will be accurate in 2 days or whatever, stuff that you as like a central BI person, you don't know. But if you have like a data expert in a given department, they will know.
Right. And what will flow through to you is more like, we've got this tough problem we're trying to solve.
Yeah.
And we need someone with your level of technical expertise who can solve it.
Yeah.
That's a much better place to be as a data person.
Yes.
It is interesting. And I think, we got about 10 minutes left of the show here. And then I have all my coworkers are out at the bar right now, drinking some of that world famous Czech beer. So I'll be joining them shortly. But I do think there will be a big change in what self-service looks like
Yeah.
because of AI technology. And I can tell you, we're working on some cool stuff here. We had James Harris, who worked at ThoughtSpot. They've done some cool stuff around what we'll be able to do thanks to AI. And I do think the face of self-service is going to change. And if anything, what I think it's going to be is where I actually see the most promise is in creating data exploration interfaces that finally bring in things like data science and machine learning at the point of data analysis. So, what everybody sees right now is chatbots, and chatbots are cool. But I think the form factor of chatbots, like having this long, narrow window, is not ideal for data analysis. I want to use the whole screen. I still want to be able to talk to it, but I want to use the whole screen. And in that context, I want it to be doing things like, automatically applying some data science to project out revenue into the next 6 months when I just ask for revenue, right?
Yeah. And
that sort of thing is becoming more and more possible thanks to some of the AI tooling that we've seen come online in the last year and a half. So I think it's going to be more, in a weird way, it's still not self-service.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we've distilled the skills of a data analyst into a machine.
Yeah.
And that machine will be helping you.
Yeah.
Rather than having always to go to a person.
Well, the self is the LLM. No.
Yeah. I mean, eventually, right? We'll switch. The self will be the LLM.
Yeah. The LLM will also be asking the questions. Right. That's when, with LLMs, the self will actually become the end user instead of the data analyst. And then after that, the self will become the AI system will start asking questions.
Well, I mean, it's like, how many times are you on Reddit and you're reading through some thread and you're like, I think this is two AIs arguing with each other.
Yeah, it's like, or any political sub. It's like, if you're in the comments, you're like, most of these must just be bots.
Yeah.
Most of them.
Right. It's true.
Yeah.
Oops. All right. Cool. Well, I think, so I would say, Atanas, next time you're close to Berlin, please ping me. Here, there is also good beer. Yeah, Atanas lives in Berlin. Actually, Atanas, I'm going to be here for a month in August, July and August. Bringing my family, my 3 kids. We're going to be in Europe for a month, and I think we're planning on a long weekend in Berlin. So if that happens, I will reach out to you and let you know, and maybe you can show us around town. That would be cool. All right. So I think that about wraps it up. A big shout out to Aaron Wilkerson, who we interviewed at the beginning of the episode. That interview was recorded at Data Day Texas, our favorite data conference in the United States. It will be in January again next year. We will be there. Be sure to check it out. When we get more information about that, we'll share it with you here, and we will share with you our discount code. So if you want to come to Data Day Texas, be sure to use that discount code. And check out Aaron. He's easiest to catch on LinkedIn. Do we have an Aaron? I feel like we even have an Aaron Wilkerson banner. Do we not?
I don't think we do.
No, we don't. Okay. Well, it's Aaron Wilkerson. Check him out on LinkedIn. Just search for Aaron Wilkerson. You'll find him. Really cool dude. Connect with him. His stuff on LinkedIn is awesome. Also, I would say, we talk about it every episode. We're really close to getting a date nailed down for the Low-Key Data Meetup Detroit. Okay. So that is probably going to be in April, the second or third week in April. Will be the very first Low-Key Data Meetup Detroit. So if you are watching us from the Detroit area, when we get that date put on the calendar, probably going to be in Royal Oak or else in Detroit City itself. But I'm working with a couple people to make that happen. And I think that's it. Anything else? I'll be at Data Council in Austin. I will be at Gartner London, not Gartner Orlando. Gartner Orlando is next week. If you're going to that, have fun, folks. If you're going to Gartner London, I look forward to meeting you there. Anything else to wrap the show up with here? I think that covers it.
No, that's about it. Any
All right.
any other good shows coming up we should tell the people about?
Oh yeah, next week we've got Nicholas Kelly. We're doing an unboxing of Nicholas Kelly has produced all these cool cards. They're like Pokemon for data nerds almost. He's got all these card sets you can buy that have like visualizations or like dashboard components or data product ideas to just help you. Believe it or not, thinking in the real world is just as important as thinking on a screen. And so what these cards help you do is kind of like physically lay out ideas, lay out thoughts, can help you come up with cool ways to present data, cool visualizations you've never thought of before. So I've got a number of his card sets, and we're going to be unboxing them live next week at Super Data Time, which is 12 o'clock, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Central European Time every Thursday. So that's going to be next week. Nicholas will be calling in for that. And be sure to check that out. Also, I will be presenting at a couple additional conferences, MDS Fest, which is coming up in May or April, I believe, and then AI for Pi Day, AI on Pi Day. This is on 3/14. Obviously, there is an 24-hour live stream conference going all the way around the world of AI-related topics. I will be presenting during that too. I need to write all this stuff down.
Yeah.
Michael Norris, yes, I will have a link for the cards available by next show. So, yes, and good to see you, Mike. Good to see you here again. All right, I think that does it for today's show. I am going to go drink some of that world famous Pilsner that they serve here in Prague.
And I'm going to go back to work because this hour is my lunch break.
All right. So until next week, folks, I'm Ryan.
I'm Eric.
And we are the Super Data Brothers. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.